Hey guys, welcome back to the Speaker's Edge podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping you to learn from some of the world's very best speakers and communicators so you can learn to master your message, inspire your audience every single time you speak. We have had so many great guests on the show over the last 6 months and still many more great guests to come. This week, none other than Jeff Henderson. He's another thought leader from the Maxwell Leadership Team. He's a preacher's kid. He's a fantastic communicator, and he's going to talk a little bit about his journey and the power of simplicity in today's interview. But before we get to that, if you haven't downloaded the companion guide, then go to maxwellleadership.com/the Speaker's Edge, download the companion resources, and if you like the show, we would love it if you rate and review the show. Thank you. All right, let's dive straight into the interview with Jeff and then take plenty of notes, and we'll talk about it at the end.
I think from a communication standpoint, I grew up a preacher's kid. So one of my earliest memories is watching my dad speak to a group of people 3 times a week. And I was just fascinated by the fact that he could say words and capture people's attention. So that was a hobby of mine. And but I promised myself I would never, ever, ever work at a church. So I was in marketing for a number of years. Started with the Atlanta Braves and Chick-fil-A. I have a strong respect and love for the business world. But long story short, about 20 years ago, my wife, Wendy, and I felt led to help start a church in the Atlanta area. And I did that for 17 years. And then traveling around speaking the last 3 years and working with great companies like Chick-fil-A, helping them with their leadership and leadership strategy. So I've kind of, like you all and like John, I've kind of bounced back and forth between for-profit and nonprofit, but I love that. But, wherever you go, and one of the things I say is that leadership eventually comes with a microphone. You've got to communicate where you're going and what you're doing. So based on my background and both in church world and business world, I've learned from a lot of great people, starting with my dad.
So there's quite a bit in there I'd want to dive into.
I'm juicy.
Like, what about Chick-fil-A? Should we start there? Tell us about something you've learned at Chick-fil-A or your time at Chick-fil-A.
Well, I think that the reason that we wanted to interview you, Jeff, this week was because we're spotlighting the law of simplicity. And we think that you perfectly emulate this law. And when we were talking about you, were saying, maybe his background at Chick-fil-A really played into the fact that he can kind of distill messages in a really snappy, memorable way. What would you say about that?
So from an advertising marketing standpoint, I learned from the best. I mean, the Eat More Chicken cow campaign, if people are not familiar with that, they can look it up. But it's actually in the Advertising Hall of Fame, and it's just really 3 words. And we had a mantra from a billboard standpoint. We wanted to go into billboards, but you can't put 27 words on there and your location and your phone number and all that. We call it the drive-by test. Can you look there for two seconds, go back to your view of the road and go, what did that billboard say? So Eat More Chicken was a really simple but powerful message. But I began to apply that in communication as well. And I began coaching communicators for 20 years and began to ask them, if you were to put your message on a billboard and I only had 3 seconds to drive by, what would you put on the billboard? And so this idea of just a few words, the less you say, the more powerful it is. There's the old adage that if you give me an hour to speak, I can do it right now. But if you give me 15 minutes, I got to think about it, right? So,
really,
and a lot of times people think that the more words I say, the more they'll stick. That actually isn't true. And I found that not just true in communication, but true in advertising. And if you think of the memorable advertising messages in the world over time, it's really just a handful of words that are powerful. Now, that sounds really easy. It is exceedingly hard. And you have to get to the point where you write a lot of bad advertising, a lot of bad messages to get to distill that one key phrase.
Well, that drive-by test, I think, is a great way of putting it. I've heard people say before, if you're in an airport and you're walking to your gate and you look at the magazines on the shelf, what similar sort of thing. There's a few words that grab you, that make you stop and pick it up and think, oh, I'll get this. I need abs. I'll get this. And they're always the same, those types of magazines. Right. But what a great test. And so it's work, you're saying. It takes work to make it simple. Because it's not just simple, it's simple, but still impactful and effective, presumably.
Right. Well, and there are always those moments where it just falls out of the sky, right? And so, but I think this idea that's it's kind of romanticized that somebody's sitting in a log cabin, smoking a pipe and getting a great,
Yeah.
that happens occasionally, but usually it's just hard work. It's the Stephen Pressfield book, The War of Art. And it's just, you just got to go to war. And trust me, I can assure everyone listening today that I have written more bad bottom lines and bad messages than anyone on this call. The trick, though, is that most people have never even seen those, because you have to work through the bad to get to the good. And you can't judge what you're writing. You can't edit what you're writing. You got to keep that. There's a time for that. You just got to get everything out, and you win if you have words on a page or on a screen. We kind of distill that message. And so one of the things, back to the Chick-fil-A example, we would, when it came to any message, we would say, what is the single most persuasive idea? And that's a really great, hard question to answer, but it's really helpful because your content has a tendency to compete among itself. And so the more content you have, the more the messages compete. And in church world, I've coached pastors and preachers for years. They'll preach a sermon series in one sermon. I'm like, no, you could have spread that out over, 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So really having really, and then the pushback is, Susan and Roddy, well, what if I don't fill the time? And one of the things I learned from Andy Stanley at North Point was, your goal is not to fill the time. Your goal is to leverage the time. Your goal is not to fill the billboard. Your goal is to leverage the billboard and to connect with people. And that's what John has taught us over the years, right? This, in fact, in his 16 undeniable laws of communication, it really is about connecting with people.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I like that. So I'm thinking, and I'm not claiming that I made this up, but simplicity is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. I'm sure I've heard that somewhere before, but it's work, isn't it? Work that, like you said, I always tell people when they're like, what can I speak on, or what's the point for this, or where is this going? If you're a morning person, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, sit down with a blank piece of paper and write down as many different ideas as you can. Get through all the easy ones. Keep digging. It's work, but you'll find eventually the gold. And I think that's what you're saying. Is that you on your own, though, or is that you with the team? Are you working collaboratively when you're talking about those ideas, trying to get to, what did you call it, the single most persuasive idea or the single most powerful point?
Right. Initially, it starts with me, particularly in a church environment where I'm speaking. I want to be able to go, this is a message from my heart. But then I would then I would get with a team and go, here's what I'm thinking. Here's kind of the content. What do you all think? And so that's when they would begin to shape it. I feel like as it depends on who you are, the leader, and your style. So I don't want to handcuff anybody, but I always felt like it was helpful for me to get with my team and go, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm passionate about. I never wanted somebody to hand me something to speak that I couldn't either internalize or believe. And you've got to feel this urgency that I gotta share this. If I don't share this with this group of people in one way or other, I'm going to just explode. So you got to find that. You got to find your voice. You got to find your message. And it takes time. It takes time to do that.
I love the way John in the book describes sort of the process of getting to simplicity, because it's not being simplistic. I think that sometimes people think that it's like, you've got to keep it very, not
overly simplified.
Yeah,
well.
It's not overly simplified, but he says in the book that it's like, you're going deep and fast.
Yeah.
So you've done all the work of sort of digging up this, from the heart message, but you're doing it quickly. I like that as well.
I
love it. I think it's.
I think Einstein said you've got to make everything as simple as possible, but no simpler. That's kind of oversimplification is not helpful, isn't it? Trying to find exactly the right level of simplification.
And Jeff, both of your books are I think they're like the perfect example, because I think visually they're really simple to look at and they kind of pop at you, but also the message, your first book is 4, and then the and what's next, just very simple ideas, but so like they're so big, you know, in terms of content. Was that like an intentional thing for you?
It is, Susan, and thanks for saying that. Yeah, I think it's helpful for us to think about the person that's 6 people down the line from us, if you will. And so they say, "Hey, I heard Susan speak the other day," and then somebody says, "Well, what did she say?" Well, I want people to have been able to share that message, and I can tell when I'm working on a message, and I'll ask people, "Okay, here's the message. You know, what would you share with someone over coffee if they said, 'What did Jeff talk about? What's the book about?' What would you say?" And if they can't articulate it, then I've got a lot of work to do. So, but with what to do next, for example, when people say, "Well, what's the book about?" I said, "Well, do you know anybody who's trying to figure out what to do next?" "Oh, yes." And I'll say, "That's what it's about." And so it takes 10 seconds,
So
right?
smart.
And so, but that's hard. It's hard to get there. But if it's like, you know, I've got this really vague title, and you know, I don't. Again, there are times where vagueness is creative. But if I have to choose between being creative or being clear, I'm going to choose being clear. If I can choose both, then that's really, really helpful.
I think we've probably moved past the Chick-fil-A, but there's one, I don't know if we can squeeze it back in. There's this great example, and I don't know where I heard, I'm an Audible person, so I listened to it. So I don't know where I heard it, but it was about you and something in the stadium seats, a match or something where you were, was that, or maybe must have been when you were at the Braves then.
No, it was at Chick-fil-A.
And it was Chick-fil-A. Can you tell us that? Because that sounds like simplicity.
Yeah, so it was the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which is a college football bowl game at the end of the year. And so one of my jobs at Chick-fil-A at the time was regional marketing, and where our store growth really was over kind of a geographic footprint of a lot of colleges. So that's why we decided to do college sports. And in Atlanta, there was a college football bowl game. It was a big game, and it featured teams from that geographic area. And I had our team out at it was the Georgia Dome at the time. We blew that up a few years ago, built a new stadium. We get mad in Atlanta because we never win anything. So then we just blow up.
It's the stadium's fault.
Right. So, but I sat down at the seats in the summer and I saw a cup holder at the seats, and I thought, I bet if we could put these little cow plush toys that said "Eat More Chicken" in all the cup holders, that'd be a pretty cool idea. But I didn't have money in my marketing budget to pay for 72,000 cow toys. But I knew someone who did, and that was my friend Truett Cathy, who was the founder and CEO of Chick-fil-A. So drove back to the office, and long story short, convinced Truett to write a personal check for 72,000 cows. That's the good news. The bad news is that it was University of Georgia versus University of Virginia. And during the game, after a bad call, a lot of the Georgia fans, about 20,000 of them, started throwing their cows on the field in terms of protest. So I thought that was probably going to get fired because I, wasted the owner's money. But the advertising, my boss actually, who was over advertising and marketing at Chick-fil-A, came up to me and said, "Jeff, there's an idea here." And so I think the leadership principle here is you have two people looking at the same situation coming to diametrically opposed conclusions. I thought I was going to get fired. I thought, I wonder if I could go work at Arby's or McDonald's. But my boss comes up and says, "No, there's an idea here." And he said, "We're getting a lot of publicity right now because it was live on ESPN. And because could we get the cows on the field in a different way at next year's game?" So David and I came up with an idea that at next year's game, when the two teams ran onto the field, we went to the top of the stadium and literally, we had a team of folks that dumped thousands of parachutes on the cows and parachuted them down. And it was such a big success. It's been a Chick-fil-A tradition for the last 20 or something years. And so it's a big deal. Parachuting cows are a big deal, but I know where that idea came from. It came from what I thought was the worst day in my marketing career. It actually ended up being one of my best. And I do think that ties into this whole idea of messaging, and you're going to have some messages that, as I coach communicators, I'm like, "Hey, do you really want to get into this? Are you sure you want to get into this? Because this is it's going to challenge you. All your insecurities and doubts about yourself are going to come up. And I really do believe in the power of communication, writing and speaking, but it's going to, bring all that out." So at some point, you just got to move through the ups and downs. And one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten is to release your words. Once you've spoken, once you've written and the book is published and you're like, oh no, like I don't even like to look at my books. Big books, I've only written 2, but I don't even like to look at them because I'm like, what if I find a mistake? I don't want to do that, but you have to release your words. And so you have to release these ideas. So as I'm seeing cows being thrown onto the field, like, oh gosh, but fortunately I had someone who was genuinely for me. We kept pushing through, and then here we are 20 something years later, and Chick-fil-A is still using parachuting cows.
That's awesome. So mistakes can be part of that simplicity, but messing up can be part of that, getting to the real simple idea, the real success.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
And what John has taught us is about how to fail forward and to ask yourself, what do we do now? And what can we learn from this? And I love that, how John has modeled that for us, into his 70s now, still moving forward. I got a text from him yesterday about a song he's writing with some country music. I'm like, wow, okay, that's awesome. So
when did you first meet John? Just give us that backstory. I'm guessing it was years ago.
Yes, it was. he and Andy Stanley were scheduled to speak at a conference, and Andy hurt his back and called me and said, I'm supposed to be in Texas, but I can't get on a plane because of my back. Can you go for me? So, I felt so bad for all these people that are coming to see John Maxwell and Andy Stanley. And it's John Maxwell and who's this guy? And so, but John was gracious. Mark Cole was gracious. We went to dinner the night before. I flew out to Texas. And so we're sitting there having dinner, and John's asking me all these leadership questions. And I'm like, wait. You've tricked me. I don't know anything about all this. And so, but I just thought that's so remarkable. He's wanting to learn and all that. So I called the timeout, said, I have questions for you, John. So I just, and I'd known Mark. And so they've just been so kind and gracious to me. And so, the closer you get to your heroes, sometimes they let you down, but that's not the case with John Maxwell. The closer you get, the more real he is. He's who you see on stage.
Yeah. The more you love him.
And we love you being part of the Maxwell Certified Team. You're one of our thought leaders, and I think you're such a great addition.
And those books, I mean, if anyone hasn't got them, they're
I know. I particularly
You're
love
a book
4.
Leader. Yeah, I like 4 as well.
But
they're both good.
They're both
so much,
great,
so practical, so much great stuff. But I like them more audible. I like them a little fast, 1.25 or 1.3 speed. And I'm so pleased that you narrate them yourself. I hate when you get a book and it's somebody else reading it. It's like.
What are you working on now, Jeff?
Well, I have a 3rd book that I'm working on, but I'm still. It's going to be on leadership, but I think it's more about leading yourself. But I don't like coming out with a book too frequently. And I say that I've only come up with 2, but they're like, the publisher has been patient enough. But I'm working on some projects with Chick-fil-A that I think will help me discover how to scale leadership. And because part of the challenge sometimes with leadership is people think you don't have to convince me that leadership development is important. I just don't have time for it right now, but I'm going to a conference, in 7 months, and I'm all for conferences, but is there a way that leadership is every day? And John has taught us that. So I'm just trying to figure out that. So the publisher's been great to go, okay, go figure that out. Because as Chick-fil-A grows, one of the main things that they're going to have to do is to grow their leadership so that the business doesn't outgrow them. And they're experiencing exponential growth. So how do you scale leadership when leaders don't have the time to do that? And so that's what I want to try to figure out.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for finding time for us today. It's great to chat to you.
And if you know any powers that be, maybe put in a word for them to put Chick-fil-A in Jupiter, Florida.
Yeah, we would love
anytime soon. We would love one.
If you have that kind of sway.
John spoke to the Chick-fil-A convention a couple of years ago, and he literally got on his knee and said, "Please put it in the, where he lives in Florida." He's got a lot more sway than I do, but and I'm a big fan of both of yours. We had dinner together. Gosh, I don't know. It was maybe a year ago, and just got to hear more of your stories. And so, just a big fan. And thanks for including me on this.
Yeah, of course.
We loved having you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jeff. Take care. He's so good, isn't he? So good. I love the way that he talks about the law of simplicity, and that drive-by test is so simple, isn't it? If you imagine he was working for Chick-fil-A, so you got the billboards as you're driving along, you glance up at the billboard, can you take in the message in the time you glance at it? That's the drive-by test. I love it. And how simple. A cow saying, eat more chicken, 3 words, eat more chicken. That's the message distilled down to its absolute genius simplest, isn't it? So simple. And then he talks about how he learned to apply this in his communication and like in copywriting and advertising. And he said, the more you say, the less you end up saying. It's so true, isn't it? So we've got to work hard to distill our message down to its simplest essence. It was, who was the one, some of you would know this, the American president who said, if I have 10 minutes to speak, I need a week to prepare. If I have 30 minutes, then I need 2 days. If I have an hour, then I'm ready now. Like, give me the mic. I'm off. The shorter the time we have, the more we need to really think about what we're going to say. Every precious second counts in that situation. Many people that I work with, they try and include everything they know into one message or one story. They're very good at, let's say, leadership. They have a wealth of leadership material. And so they have a story, and they're taking us on a journey to make one point, but they see the opportunity to make many more points along the way because they're very skilled and knowledgeable with their information. It ends up with 3, 4, 5, 10 points in this simple story. And then the story is competing with itself. Instead of being simple, it's very complex. And it's very impressive to look at it and think, oh, you really understand leadership, but it's not effective. So you don't want to hang everything you know off of one story. One story, one point is just a great formula. Otherwise, the message is competing with itself. Jeff talked about that, didn't he? And so we don't want that clutter. We don't want that confusion. We don't want that static in the message. It confuses it. We want it to be clear and crisp and clean and powerful. So we need to work through all of the distractions, all of the irrelevancies, and shave those away, sharpen up the point. And it takes time to get to that. It starts out being about a lot of things, and then gradually it's very, very focused. It's about one thing. What's the single most important idea? What's the single most persuasive idea, as Jeff said? So we work through the bad, and then we get to the good. There's a quality, when you do this, there's a quality that comes from quantity. You start out with maybe lots of different ideas, and then you distill it down. And through the quantity, through the effort, through the work, you eventually end up at the essence of the message. So good. I think it was Edison who said genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So the more we work at it, the clearer we get. 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Well, I think simplicity is genius of a sort, isn't it? Because you're taking something that maybe is complicated and you're making it simple so that people can understand, so that people can get the message. I love it. The way that Jeff talks about this, you probably took this down, maybe this was something you took notes on. He says you've got to get the words down. If you're getting the words out, if you're getting them down, if you're working on paper, then you're making progress. And then gradually you're going to get closer on that single most persuasive idea. And then he talked about coaching different people, different pastors in the church world, and they would take a sermon and they would try and include everything they know. It comes from a good place, doesn't it? We're trying to over-deliver. So we put everything we know into the message. He's saying if you look at it, you could break that single sermon down into 5 or 6 weeks. So we're not trying to tell them everything we know. We're trying to share something, and we want it to land. We want it to hit home. And then what about that great quote when he was talking about, Truett Cathy said, the goal is not to fill the billboard, the goal is to leverage the billboard, leverage the opportunity. It's the same as when you're writing a letter, isn't it? The goal is not to fill from the top to the bottom all the way through with words, it's to lay it out in a pleasing way that makes it inviting to the eye and makes your core messages stand out. They're not going to remember everything, but they're going to remember something, or at least they ought to. What is it? We should know what that is. So he talked a lot about how he kind of works on this. And then I asked him, do you have a team? Do you do this on your own, or do you do it with a team? And he said, well, I shape my ideas first of all, and then I get that collaborative thinking from other people. What do you think about this? This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Do you think this is going to work? And John does this a great deal when he's writing his books. He taps into the minds of lots of other people because he says that none of us is as smart as all of us together. It's great, isn't it? So I love the way that Jeff was talking about, like, it's work to work at it, and then it gets better and better and better. The more effort that you put in, the simpler it gets, the more powerful it gets. I think it was Brandeis that said there's no such thing as great writing, only great rewriting. It's the same thing, isn't it? You have this idea in your head, you get it down on paper, you're thinking this is going to be great, and then you read it and you're like, that's rubbish. It was much better in my head than it is down here. You need to work it, you need to edit it, you need to tweak it, and then it gradually gets better. It's the same with speaking. You have this great idea for a story or for a message, and then you give birth to it out loud, and you're like, God, that was a jumbled mess. What was I thinking? But the best way to get clear on what you're trying to say is to try and say it, and gradually you make more and more progress. Then Jeff, right at the end, he talked about the difference between being creative and being really crystal clear on your message. And he said, if I have to choose between being creative and being clear, then I have to choose clear. It's important to be clear. Ideally, I want both, but you cannot be without clear, because otherwise it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So keep going, keep working on your message, on your speaking, on your keynotes, on your stories, on your teaching pieces. You're going to make mistakes. It's not going to work perfectly first time, but each time you learn and they get better and better and better. So wonderful, wonderful message from Jeff Henderson. All right, so as I said, Jeff Henderson is a thought leader with the Maxwell Leadership Team. If you're interested in finding out what it means to be a coach with the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team, then you wouldn't be the first. There's like nearly 60,000 people worldwide who are coaches in about 168 different countries. If you're interested in developing your speaking, then it's a no-brainer. It's so much more than that, but just the speaking. It's worth it for just the speaking. There's nowhere better to learn from John than as a Maxwell Leadership Certified Team member. If it's something you're interested in finding out about, no obligation, just go to maxwellleadership.com/speak. We would love to have you. We would love to have you. I think you'll find it's a fit. As I said at the beginning, don't forget to download our companion resources. Go to maxwellleadership.com/The Speaker's Edge. We'll be back next week with another great message for you, another great episode. Don't forget, communication is a learnable skill. It's a learnable skill, and if you develop that skill, if you work at it, then you'll keep getting better and better. You'll learn to master your message so you can inspire your audience every single time you speak. Thanks for listening today. I'll see you soon. Lots of love. Bye-bye. God bless.